Well, hello everyone, and happy Friday. That's what I would say. Hey Jan, welcome back to the CMA panel EMEA.
Good afternoon.
Thanks everyone for joining. Today we're going to talk about OT management in ServiceNow, which is a too neglected topic at the moment, and I have the feeling it's just starting out to really take shape out there to understand what it really is and to help you with that journey. And if there are questions around, that's why we're doing this here today. My guest is, as I said, it's Jan. Jan, if you want to introduce yourself quickly, I know you've been here before, but maybe not everyone
Yeah,
is
so
remember
maybe
that.
introduction in relation to the topic. So I had a chance for last 2 years join the partner working in the automotive and closer to the industry. So it's why OT topic is something I'm diving in still at the beginning of it because it is huge. So as a ServiceNow practitioner with 10 years of experience with ServiceNow, it is amazing what you meet in ServiceNow world. It happened to me with telco, for instance, in 2021. I met the telco world with a telco industry product, and from that moment, I'm observing very closely what is happening with the industry products in ServiceNow, and it is really interesting worlds, and it takes you to a lot of new adventurous spaces. So this is my background, usually working on standard implementations, ITSM and all others, but today also something related to industries, manufacturing, operational technology.
All right. So, and I'm your host, Christian. I've been doing this for a while now. My background in OT is not as strong as Jan's. I have read a lot on this. I didn't have the chance to properly implement it somewhere, but well, we'll get there. And obviously, I have a lot of things that I would like to talk to you about, and to you guys out there. Can ask questions as per usual in the chat room. We have done that last time very successfully. There were a lot of questions in regard to CSDM on the last session, and if you have anything that that you want to know in terms of OT management, then always come out with the questions, and then let's dive right in, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So obviously, when we talk about OT management, we are talking about something that is different than the usual IT service management that most companies start. When I started researching on the OT topic or the industry topics in general, what could be interesting, and OT was one of the topics that fell out. It was pretty clear very fast that there are so many things in ServiceNow that the standard implementation of ITSM doesn't just cover, right? And OT management apparently is one of these things. Can you elaborate a little bit, Jan, for the audience, the difference between OT and IT and why we need to separate these?
Yeah, yeah, and this is the broader discussion about what is happening with the industries today. Uh, so we all know all the good IT and ITSM area with the space of all the managements, the processes which are keeping IT running. And this is actually how the IT is perceived, like some brain for the organization where you are working with a lot of data, and it is providing capability to decide. So, and here, what we see is what is happening today. It is called IT to OT convergence. And the two disciplines are now colliding and getting together. What was previously pretty scattered is now getting closer. And so let's look at it a bit closer. So OT is about manufacturing, and the primer focus is really on the hardware connected to the plants, to the manufacturing, to the factories to produce something. So,
And maybe we should start there. What does characterize an OT device?
Yeah, it is really something physical what is connected to the manufacturing, to the creation of something sitting on the shop floor. This is the place where it's being delivered, when it's being manufactured. And it is a lot of devices. It can be the old-fashioned machineries. And the specialty is that there is a lot of very old devices still running because no one wants to replace that. It usually is connected to the huge investments, and the companies are using it for a long time, and it is still delivering value. So these machineries are also being upgraded to the production islands full of robotics and full of the specific equipment. And today, when talking about OT, it has its area in service now. We've got the models. There are the special CI classes, so you can find a lot of these uh, OT-related classes in CMDB. But this is really something specific in the plant. Today, it is going beyond those machineries and actuators. There is a lot of PLCs and control mechanisms, industrial databases, historians, a lot of very specific devices which are there to produce the manufacturing. So this is what the OT is.
When
And
you talk about you find them in the CMDB and ServiceNow, that is not something that's there out of the box, right?
it is if you put it there the new model, you've got it. I guess they are part of the standard CMDB model today, but I might be wrong. It is the same with the telco and with others. On Monday there was the release, and there are the new classes for GPU units and the computational equipment, which is also very specific, but is part of that CMDB model.
The CI class extension.
Yeah, extensions. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, so maybe it is not part of the vanilla, but once you start using the CMDB extension classes, you see hundreds, and today over 1,000 out of the box classes. So the area for OT specific, but there are specifications. But back to the OT. So the OT as a management is like how to keep it running, right? And we will get to more details along our discussion. In comparison, IT is related to the running the organization and its processes, collecting data, enabling decisions. So it is characterized with something what is scalable, what is adaptable. In comparison to OT, OT up to now is something more static, but it is changing. It is changing hugely towards the smart factories. Similarity with the telco as well. It was very static previously, but the networking, for instance, now we all know things like software-defined ones as SD1s, and the things you don't need to go and readjust physically to change its purpose, right? And it is happening also to the factories. So this is the goal, eventually have it something very flexible, what can be adopted quickly to the needs of what you want to produce. And it is where it need to meet the IT and be together, working together with a lot of implications.
So yeah, and these implications are what I would like to highlight as well in this. So when we're talking about the convergence of IT and OT, there's new challenges that come to the industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, what was previously stable and protected, physically protected, you can simply go to the shop floor. There is the huge security allowing you to go there, and it is deliberately not directly connected. Even today, the discovery of the OT devices is one of the biggest challenge. Is now getting more close to the other world. What is demanding another security countermeasures and other mechanisms how to protect it. So this is like finding the balance between connecting things, having it communicating each other, plant to plant, but still keeping it secure. And this is why, and we will see that in detail what is in service now as a capabilities of the OT. And one of the starting pillar of it is vulnerability response for OT.
Hmm.
Because imagine if you are putting something vulnerable in IT and solving it, what the impacts are. It can be huge. It can be money, business dependencies and impacts. But in comparison to OT, it is still very small. If your production stops, if something if there is some intrusion to the shop floor, to the manufacturing, the impacts are huge.
Yeah, the impacts are huge. I once shut down a database for electronic picking by accident, and I think it was only half an hour later that the entire factory stood still. And then, it's a factory. That's hundreds of people who can't work anymore and produce the stuff that actually generate value for your company, right?
Yeah.
We got a question. We got a question here. Does OT management mainly focus on physical devices, and can it be managed these devices through standard ITSM processes? That is one of the questions that we are going to address during the next 45 minutes. So that is definitely something that we will be addressing. Yes.
This is great one. Thank you for that, because this is exactly why it exists separately, the OT management in ServiceNow. So we will.
So I'm gonna highlight that question, Inos, and then we'll come back to that a little bit later.
Maybe stay for a while with those vulnerabilities, just to finish it up. What I wanted to say, the statistics shows that now the hackers' energy is more focused on the manufacturing because of those impacts. A lot of vulnerabilities are there, and it is increasing more and more in comparison to the IT world. So hackers and white hackers activities are moving towards the manufacturing, towards the OT, because if someone wants to harm you with your manufacturing, it can produce bigger harm. So it's why the vulnerability is that important, and why opening it to the corporation brings the huge challenges of how to keep it secured with the specific protocols, separation of the data, and etc.
Maybe a good or a good point here would be to point out what is part of the OT management, because the OT management itself is not only OT service management. That's the part that Inos was just referring to, but it's also not only the vulnerability management that you just mentioned. There are multiple components involved here, and these two being the main ones, right? But there is, I think there's also a discovery component in there.
There is. We will check it how it goes. So let's look at it. Before doing it, I would like to finalize this thought of the IT that convergence. And to me, I can't stop myself thinking of it like that. Two different thinking of our brains. What is the myth, by the way? But what is the reality is like two different approaches to the tasks. And this is exactly what is happening with IT/OT. The two have something different in mind. And this is why ServiceNow started with the OT. So just instead of taking the ITSM and putting the OT devices and running it through IT, there are the different tasks to be solved.
Right.
And so,
and it's a different audience as well, right? I think that is one of the things that when I prepared for this panel here today, that stuck out to me and really struck a nerve, that the way IT works has been in the last, how long I've been doing this, 20 years. It was essentially always focused on providing services, very structured, very even when it wasn't focused on services but on applications, right? It was still structured, and we were process oriented. We were trying to optimize the processes, to find responsibles and so on. And on the factory floor, it is still a little bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's sometimes it seems like from the Middle Ages, because it is stable. It is there for years, and it is that principle you you introduced to me when we were starting that really you don't need to have a robust processes up to now. So it is
The
many
Hey
years.
Joe principle.
Yeah, hey Joe
The
principle,
Hey Joe principle. I like that.
and it is a lot of years beyond the ITSM, and this is what OT is, where OT is taking inspiration for. So the
Right.
processes, the ITIL, the ITSM is very matured. It goes with that adaptability and scalability and quickly changing things in IT, but not that quickly change in OT leads to some, it is just kept as stable and not changing too fast. What is now changing? So there is the huge inspiration for OT from IT to move things into more flexible processes, and also knowing about the data, being able to change the configurations, etc. So this is
Right.
the fact. It is beyond the IT and taking inspiration from IT.
All right. Let's move into the capability map that you just started to share here, um, to show where the OT is actually sitting within the platform.
Yeah. So as you see, it is sharing the space in technology excellence together with IT. So this is very close, and architecturally taken. It is reusing the framework of the ITSM in terms
Yeah.
of inheriting the classes, the logic, a lot of principles, but it is specialized, and here it applies. And as we will see, there is the process, OT incident management. You can't do that in the incident management of IT because you need that separation.
Why? That is the question that Inus is asking here. And I
Mhm.
think it's a valid question. Can you elaborate as to why that is the case? Because the initial impulse of everybody would be, why not? It's a device, something is wrong with it. I want to restore the service as soon as possible, and someone needs to take care of it. So,
Yeah, the
what's
process.
the difference?
Yeah, so first the security. So you need to separate it very very strictly. So this is the thing. You can do that in incident, but you would provide ACLs like hell and do everything to keep it separated from the compliance perspective. The two processes simply can't share the same area. Physically, the OT incident is just inherited class of the standard incident. So it is there
Right.
with its own set of the rules. Who can see that? But secondly, it is OT incident management is not incident management by ITIL. It has its specific steps. It has its specific specialized behavior. So it is not behaving as an ITIL incident management. This is the second why. The behavior of it is different. So first is to separate it, keep it separated and safe. And second is the behavior is different to the IT incident management.
Right. When we're talking about security here, we are talking about unauthorized access by the personnel from IT in this particular case. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that kind of reminds me of the old discussion, when we started doing ServiceNow, and the classic request catalog came on, and everyone was like, "Hey, can't we just assign some tasks to HR?" And it turns out we couldn't, because HR needs that separation, and that's why we now have HRSD, which is with its own data model, and it's very much separated from
Mm,
other processes that might be similar but still need that separation for security reasons. And
mm.
I think it's similar with the OT.
It is. It is. I can, as architect, I can also imagine that there will be some requirements that strong, which would lead you to
Yeah.
use the different instance for the OT, because you can do that with some level of the governance, but there is still the risks if you've got your admins, if you've got a normal approach to the instance, you can easily get into the moment when you won't be compliant with the security requirements to the OT. Yeah. So no, overlapping processes, IT incident management, OT incident management. It flows entirely in separation. This is by design, and it is wanted. It is something
So,
desired.
Inos, I hope that answers your question. I think that's as deep as we should go with that separation between ITSM and OT. As to the question why there are different approaches in general. But if there are more specific questions, just bring them on. We're here. We can talk about these things.
Yeah, I
When
got one more specific just to put it here as a source of the information, but here starts really the detailed discussion. So just as a reference in the OT, this is why it cannot be used. So more arguments, what we already discussed, but even more deep dive on why it cannot be done together. Yeah, because and mainly I repeat that the first is the security separation and the other is the behavior. So the different standards, different working with all the scores and the things. But for instance, platform based, it is sharing a lot of things like
it's sharing a lot of things.
in the CMDB. Yeah,
Yeah,
but there
I was really surprised when I installed it and I checked, and the overlaps are incredible.
Yeah, but there are really very specific behaviors. For instance, what is the OT device, like OT classes, and how it behaves? Because the OT device is something very close to asset itself, but in OT CMDB you have it as a class, but the class name eventually is OT device. And but this is fun because it started as a OT asset, and then it was renamed to OT device because this is terminology of the OT world, and it is similar to telco I was talking about. There are some specific things ServiceNow simply must follow because this is the world of OT. This is the world of industry. Yeah. So how every CI can become the OT CI? There are the mechanism of it. So there are some hooks, some many tables where you can connect your OT asset with another CMDB class, making it OT device. So very specific behavior. So this is one of the whys it is separated in comparison to IT.
There is a specific question that Inus is asking here. To understand, you mentioned that earlier that the incident management for OT differs very much from the incident management in IT. And he would like to know how. The process itself. Oops.
Yeah, so generally the OT incident management is simpler. It is more straightforward as it is required in the production. So it is having the different steps and is taken differently than the ITIL-based incident management. It is more straightforward, like understanding where it is. Also, that classification is more related to the equipment model and to the site, to the specification where it's happening, and then directing it to the resolution quicker than in a standard incident. So it is overall it is simpler than the standard incident management.
And what I liked about the OT service management module itself and the workspace that comes with it is that you are actually kind of modeling your factory floors by locations, to make sure that you reflect what you just said, right? That it is very much based on the location where people are, and it kind of takes away what we in IT have, this remote working thing, and it incorporates this what we mentioned, the Hey Joe principle. People who are kind of around and take care of things in their location.
And also imagine it won't be people soon, but some autonomous machines like those autonomous vehicles who are helping you to exchange something there if it is not working. So the locality is very important here.
Mm.
And this is why, and this is specific. It is something new. You can't find it anywhere else. Equipment models. This is the set of the tables. It is like structure, the blueprint of your fabric of your plant. And there are the standards for it. It is ISA 95. This is like the plants and to the down to the manufacturing cells. So all the structure, how you can design your factory. And if you take it as a blueprint, you can build just on the next field close to your one plant, another plant using this equipment model. But it'll be different locality. So it is like structure. And then your devices are connected to these levels of the equipment model. So it is something what is very similar to what we know from the CMDB, the dependency view, but it is entirely different. So it doesn't live in the CMDB like those manufacturing line is not the CMDB. It is the composition of the devices which fits into the equipment model. And what is nice is that ISA 95 is not the only standard. Every manufacturer or family of the manufacturers can work with their own. For instance, the huge European Volkswagen families having their own model. It's called VAS, now version 6, which is the semantics, the understanding how the factories from the family can exchange data. So it doesn't matter it is Audi or Skoda or Porsche, whatever, they can understand each other using this equipment model. But it is not ISA 95, it is their own. So in the future, when and it is the huge topic, like how the companies will cooperate in the future. Do they develop a car, develop something? Is the some mutual endeavor? There is a lot of companies involved in it, and they need to use the same semantics. And the equipment model is one of the mechanisms how to understand each other.
Right. Cool. So now we have one question. It's fitting. I wanted to park it, but since we are on kind of a conceptual break in our thinking, Charlene would like to understand, and hi Charlene, thanks for joining, would like to understand what is the line, where do you draw the line between IT assets and OT assets, given that we have IT devices running on the OT network, and how, and this is my question to you, just to make it a little more complicated, how are they interacting in the model that you just described when we're talking about dependencies?
Yeah, there are that ISA 95 model has the layers starting from the very bottom up, where are the device layer of the real OT, the actuators and roboters. Going up the layers where there is some control layer with a PLC, and reaching the layer 4 or 5 where it is the classical IT. So, and these are the layers. So it is part of the model, and from layer to layer, on that IT layer, it becomes the standard servers and computers connected to it. So it is really that ISA 95 standard models. So I can check if I've got a picture of this model somewhere.
I think that would be helpful for everybody. Yeah.
I can quickly open it. Give me a sec. If give me.
In the meantime, don't shy away from asking more questions. That's why we have Jan here. He is the expert, the real one on this topic. I'm decent, but not on his level at this moment. So just keep going with the questions.
Yeah, it's coming. I'm taking it from the original ServiceNow presentation of the
Sure.
OT. So I just didn't want to kill you with this deck because it has 170 slides.
Is that the interactive capability map?
It is the process workshop.
It's a process workshop for OT. Okay.
So here it goes. I'm sharing it now.
All right, let's have a look.
Per the model. So you see the levels 4, 5, and DMZ 3, 5 can be considered as IT classes, and everything below are the OT classes. So this is the model, and this is how it connects. So with all the firewalls between them. So it is something not invented by ServiceNow or me or someone. This is in place for ages. These mechanisms and models, that Purdue model. We can drop the link here, or I expect Christian will share with you some takeaways like links and pictures, so we can make this.
I mean, yeah, if we can certainly make an upload to this to the thing as well, and this entire session will be on the YouTube channel at the end, so it's going to be preserved to rewatch it at any time. All right, should those IT assets at the top of the model be part of ITAM or OTSM?
Yes. They can. They can, and this is that trick you can do. You can keep them as IT standard CI classes, and at the same time create another object which is making them the part of the OT.
Do we have to do that manually, or as part of the implementation, or can we actually establish a relationship between CMDB classes, which we consider to be IT classes, and the OT part?
Yeah, you can do that, and also these layers are the layers where you can consider your classical discovery to be running for IT, not below this level. No one will allow you to do the classic IT discovery for the OT devices. Level 3 and down, forget doing the standard discovery for the CIs.
That's where we get into the actual vulnerabilities, and we don't want to connect these things. And that is why OT service management, in particular the discovery module, comes with a service graph connector that allows you to ingest the data, right?
Yeah. And this is actually one of the challenges. Collect data from shop floor, and it is a huge challenge.
I read somewhere that there's a huge factor. I mean, is it 20 times the devices that we have in IT? It was some insanely high number of how much more devices we have OT in a classic manufacturing environment than we do have it in IT, and that really, I found that mind-boggling, to be honest.
That's true. It is much bigger than the classical IT. So this is first thing, and the second is, like, no one will allow you to do some kind of very agentless discovery within this OT networks. It works specifically. So the challenge can be covered either with a modern manufacturing, because modern devices behaves, they can communicate. So industrial Internet of Things, that are the mechanisms how to let devices to communicate and let know about themselves, and also send the real-time data. But it expects you've got these modern devices, right? If you are having your legacy manufacturing, you need to modernize it. And I see, and we are experimenting with that and working on a couple of proof of concepts how to do that. Like it is similar to the couple of years ago when TVs were not smart. You were able to plug something in to make them smart. And it is similar with the shop floors. You can plug in something what is smarter, like smart electrometer, and your actuator can be the old, and imagine the 3D printer there, which can't communicate at all. But just by plugging the device like the smart electrometer, you can know a lot of what is happening with the 3D printer. If you unplug it by accident from the power supply, you know about it, because there will be some different figures from that, so you can recognize the pattern. So there are also the capabilities how to make it modern, or the way what ServiceNow gives you as out-of-the-box part of the OT solution is service graph connectors, Excel-based. So take your historical data, take your data you trust, shape it into the Excel, and it is still providing the value because you've got unified structures of it. You can prepare the data and load it repeatedly then. And the import is not that straightforward. It is not just one-to-one. There is, if you look at the ETL for this service graph connector for the simple Excel, there is a lot of matching happening. Putting it, aligning it to equipment model, doing all these things like CI classes, OT, IT.
Yeah.
So this is one of the most complicated import I've seen.
And it's running through the IRE as well, right?
Yes, it is, but not straightforwardly like one-to-one. There is really a lot of things happening beyond the scene. So this is the added value of that service graph connector. So you might say like, oh, Excel, simple import. It is not that simple. So there is the huge value out of it. Plus ServiceNow, and maybe I will show one slide because it is interesting. What you get as a part of OT solution, right? And we will return to the recap of the functions themselves, but once talking about this topic, how to gather the data, this is interesting. What it is? Let me share it. So this one.
Yeah, give me a second. All right, there it is.
So you see, everything is going through identification reconciliation engine. This is the, and there are two parts. There are the intrusion detection systems, so they are rather passive, something what knows something about the infrastructure and can provide the data like cluttery, and they have their own discoveries. So these are the tools which are allowed to work with the OT layer, with the device layer, and you can then take data from there. So there are the connectors. ServiceNow works with that. So next to that service graph connector Excel, you've got a lot of connectors to these systems. Firstly, that IDS systems, and on the other hand, the systems of records. So these are really the databases for the OT data, a lot of, and this is the ServiceNow way. Like, instead of providing their own expertise, they trust the vendors who are farther there, who have the tools, and standardize it for the ServiceNow. So this is how today data flows into the OT. But this is the biggest challenge: how to collect the data and how to keep it up to date.
And that would have been my question. Actually, you kind of answered it already. I mean, I have only done this once or twice in simulated environments so far. I haven't really deployed OT out there. But when you say this is the biggest challenge, is that exaggerated, or is it the biggest challenge? Because I could foresee other challenges in an OT project. I mean, I'm not even touching OCM, right? I mean, that's a thing of its own. And that is certainly very challenging to bring these kind of management processes into a factory floor. But I understand that getting the data is difficult. When you compare that to a CMDB implementation, where would you put these numbers or complexities?
So in comparison to IT, in the classical discovery, for instance, right? This is what you mean, like some comparison.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the OTM has both, right? You can ingest with the service graph connector. If you can discover certain devices on the higher layers, then you could potentially do that as well. But yeah, in general, it's comparable to a CMDB filling exercise. Just you have less automated interfaces usually.
It's comparable. It is comparable. Just amount of data can be huge. So this is the difference. Yeah. Amount of data can be huge, but the interfaces are standardized. What the challenge is really when companies don't have those system of records when they are building it, because it is still a lot of Excel based or Microsoft Access based, so very, very old databases where you have your OT data. So if you got some system of record which you can trust and works, then for ServiceNow it is just another source for CMDB. So all the mechanisms are the same multi-source CMDB going through the identification reconciliation engine and through those ETLs which are prepared.
But determining the truth, if you don't have that, it's probably a huge challenge in a project like this, because you have no library where you can go and say, how many of these old school, I don't know, water pumps in my factory do I actually have? Maybe I have 5, maybe I have 6. I have no book where it's written, and I have no spreadsheet or no system. So I need to actually go there and look. And if I have 5 to 6 devices of one kind, it's probably easy. If I have 50 or 100, that might be an actual challenge.
Yeah, and you probably have the record about it. You've got the evidence because it somehow made its way into the shop floor. So it is at least on the paper version somewhere physically. But then the digitalization is the challenge, and there are a lot of offerings beyond the service now, like a lot of potentials here to help customers with map their shop floors, map their equipment models, and go there, and also with some other tools. There is a lot of artificial intelligence things which can help you to recognize it. So you can go with your smart glasses there and recognize it and then plug it. So a lot of things which can be done, and I can imagine there are already some mechanisms like that. We are also internally working on some tools, but this is for ServiceNow. The strategy is like don't go to the area where others specialize. So they are relying on this system of records and accommodating its standardized way into the OT CMDB. What is good, but there still remains a lot of work for the people who are really mapping it and collecting it from the shop floor.
Yeah.
So in comparison to CMDB, CMDB Discover, in terms of the mechanisms for ServiceNow, it is comparable. It is the same mechanisms. The problem is the source of the data, where IT provides more flexibility. Like if you've got the networks connected and you've got the visibility there, it is okay. And it is the same for those level 4, 5 of the OT, but lower levels really depends how modern it is and what it can say about itself, and if it is already in some record.
Absolutely. Now, say we have filled everything in. Our CMDB is extension for OT is filled. We discussed already the OT service management process. What else is there?
Let me share just. Okay, so it goes in the waves. So, and we talked about the first two here. It is like foundation and visibility. So collecting all the things you want to have regarding the equipment model. So understanding what is the structure of your plant, and then putting in the OT devices. So do some kind of discovery through those service graphs and providing the data sources. So these are the first two: foundation, visibility. And visibility is also about putting it together. So you've got it connected to your manufacturing process. So this is why that equipment model is in place, like how it fits together, how it flows through the plant. So this is where you end. With foundation and visibility, you can end up with something very close to what we know from CMDB, the dependencies views.
Yeah.
You've got pretty nice picture what sits where, and it is ready to be used in processes. The third one here is the vulnerability response. So it works in connection with those systems. So you connect it, so you have the lists of the vulnerabilities, and because you know what kind of OT devices it is, you can apply it and initiate the tasks to be done. So this is very, very similar to the IT vulnerability, just treating the OT devices. So imagine connecting it to the Cluttery or other intrusion detection systems. You've got some information about the vulnerabilities, and you are applying them to the OT devices, initiating the processes. So instead of that principle, you've got it under control, flowing the tasks and applying all the patches and mitigations for the vulnerabilities. And
But
then
hang on, but the sources for these vulnerabilities are different than IT, is that correct?
yes, there are
Yeah.
the special sources of it, but again, a lot of vendors whose business is based on the finding and providing vulnerabilities for the OT devices.
Right. Do we have any standard interfaces on ServiceNow to ingest that data?
Yes. This is part of the solution. That there is the listing in those how to connect them and
Right.
use them. So yes.
So we integrate a source for vulnerability definitions. We ingest the vulnerability definitions just like with IT vulnerability management. We run a vulnerability check and we generate our tasks for remediation.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Or automated. So the added value really is what ServiceNow is good at, the flowing it. So once I know about it, I can flow it and solve it easier. So people who are involved in it, instead of sending emails each other and phoning and having it in Excels, they have it as a vulnerability response and can tackle that smoothly. So this
Right.
is added value. And then comes the service management. So this is the top of it, and I will change the view to be.
Before we go into the service management in detail, which let's do that, right? Um, would you start with vulnerability management one, or would you start with service management?
Mm, Usually in OT environment, the vulnerability has higher priority because this
Right.
is on the roadmap something higher than the standard.
Hmm.
You firstly need to protect it.
I've seen a couple of collections of drivers for any sort of OT initiative, and the vulnerability and security of these things, in the light of recent events, of attackers going after infrastructure, etc., was very much on the vulnerability before the service management, which is a little bit. I mean, I can appreciate that, um, but is that the reality also in how these projects come about?
Yeah, seems like
Okay,
that.
cool.
It is more. It has more interest and more focus by the people who are digitalizing it to treat the vulnerabilities.
That makes sense. Yeah. All
So
right.
here is some structuring of the applications. There are
I
the three:
like this one. Yeah.
OT manager, industrial process manager, OT service management. They goes as a separate applications. You can install them separately, and it is following that maturity. So in OT manager, you achieve that foundation and visibility, and then you connect it to the industrial process, and then you can start doing your vulnerability and the management. It is like prerequisites. You cannot do the OT service management without having the previous things.
Mhm.
And the what processes are there? It started with the classical OT incident, OT change, and now newly there are two more: OT knowledge and OT request. It is very similar and the same principles. It is separated entirely from what is happening in a normal knowledge management and normal request management, just the playground, which is isolated for OT, but following all the principles from
I
service.
see. That's interesting. So when you say isolated, we're talking just like with the incident and the CMDB classes,
Yes.
extensions, but specifically behind certain ACLs with roles.
Yeah. Usually these are the inherited classes, so you can manage them separately and not provide access to anyone who is not from these classes. And usually it goes out of the box with a set of the roles. So instead of that, ITIL or incident read, you've got OT incident read. So there is the different pack of the roles you apply over the OT functionalities.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, so this is what's today OT solution in ServiceNow.
So when we talk about the adoption of all of this? How many of these projects have you done so far?
Uh, it is all very young.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah, it is very young.
I
So
have I wanted to check before the meeting, before the panel, but I forgot to check it. Do you know by any chance with which release they started doing this? It,
mm,
it d-
it
yeah,
is
doesn't matter.
it's 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah, 2 years with us. Yeah, I don't know what particular release it was. Yeah, I remember telco. It was Rome, but it is just I don't remember OT when it was. But it is 2 years with us, I guess now.
It's interesting. And are people aware? I mean, we're doing this now, and I have an initiative in my company running at the moment where I'm taking care of these kind of offerings and the structures and so on. But are people aware that that's a thing?
Uh, Not really. I guess if you on the topic with the people from doing service now, it is like very exotic. Still, it is very exotic to them
Hmm.
that there is some OT. And yeah, this is normal, I guess. It was also HR was very exotic back in the days. Not so,
It's
and
true.
also the challenges are also somewhere else. What I see, what is now usually the way for the customers is like maybe not much about the OT service management, like processes, because they've got their dedicated tools for it. But what is the weakness is like not having the centralized system of record, and this is where ServiceNow can
Hmm.
solve. So I was part of the initiatives which are now leading to the real projects delivering the things. Rather, they were proof of concepts, but and this is one of the drawback because of the not the appetite to go very quickly forward because people are afraid of changing the things. But if you build the robust system of record, it harms nothing. It can just improve things, turning
It's still a change, though. That's scary for a lot of people.
turning the old legacy systems, because this is what OT relies on, turning them off and replacing with something in service now is still seems to be risky to the people. So they need to see it in action. They need to see that it provides the reliable data. And this is what we are doing. We are making it a centralized system of record and showing how you can provide it further. And just mobilizing it in ServiceNow within the processes is one of the options, but very often it is like, can you provide it further into some industrial cloud where we are doing our OT incident management? And this is where we answer yes, because ServiceNow, it is characteristics of the ServiceNow. It's open
It's a
platform,
cloud, right?
cloud, and it is also a very open platform. So if you
Yeah.
have it in, you can easily provide it further. So
But
taking over
at
the
that point, we are at the customization, or
yeah,
more
yeah,
or less
where we are.
customization level already.
So I was really not a part of the project implementing full-blown OT capabilities. I saw a couple of customer use cases by ServiceNow. So there are the real customers using it, and
Yeah,
for sure, because ServiceNow is usually delivering their products with the customers, not doing it artificially without having it for real for some customer. So they are the cases using it as a OT processes directly in ServiceNow. But what I have experience is really building it, the working system of record, and providing it further, and now putting the OT topics onto the roadmap to make it
that's
interesting
where it belongs. Yeah.
for decision makers.
And I think it is, in particular, for projects like this, it is so super important. And that comes back to what you just said, to have a very strong OCM in these projects, because you're dealing with a different set of people, different audience. And this can be scary, which reminds me to ask a question. How are the mobile capabilities of this thing? Because I imagine when you run around a factory floor, you don't want to run like 150 meters in that direction to the next terminal. You want to do that on your tablet.
That's a great question. It is not mentioned anywhere explicitly, like OT for mobile, but what mobile does, you can have it as an interface. So everything
Yeah, of
what
course.
is designed backend is designed also mobile. So when it comes to actions, approvals, push notification, something operating on your phone can be used for OT as well.
Because that I think that's where actual value lies, right?
Yeah, and it seems to me like it will be also touching the field service management one day, because there is a lot of
Yes.
capabilities in field service management doing the real job somewhere with locality, with the GPS, with the dangerous zones. I am entering something to replace the device, and it is in the field service management a lot of things.
I would be interested in exploring that a little more, because when we're talking about OT service management and resolving certain OT incidents, right?
Mhm.
Where would you draw the line between doing that as it is intended and then moving it on to a field service task? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, this is what I miss yet, the connection between OT service management and field service management. In field service management, you can make that the work to be done on the field from almost everything. So I expect you can do that even today, but I haven't seen it like the native capability of the OT to behave as a field service management. So if I'm building it and someone asks me to provide capabilities which I see today in FSM, but by my opinion, it can be easily integrated. But there
I
is,
mean, yeah, it should be easily integratable, right? But that's not an integration that's there out of the box yet.
mm, as far as I know, and it is dangerous to claim anything. It's evolving so quickly. Every day I recognize there is something new. I claimed yesterday it is not there, and it is already there. So this is what I foreseen very quickly happening, like showing the field service management and what it can do for OT, like doing
Right.
the real things in the field.
That would be an interesting use case to see ultimately. All right. Well, we don't have any more questions at the moment in chat. So I would say let's do this a happy Friday, an earlier one. I mean, it's like a minute, but still, I would like to thank you, Jan, for being here. I appreciate it, as always, being here as a speaker. Again, we will talk more. There will be more episodes. I think next Friday we're going to talk about CSDM once more, but it is the second session. So we will be focusing, instead of the model itself, a little more on the separate domains within the CSDM and move forward on that. There will be a lot of sessions because that thing is bread and butter for everything in IT. And I wonder at some point when we will see the OT stuff in the CSDM. All right.
Okay,
So
thank
thanks, Jan, for being
you.
here.
It was a pleasure. Great topic. And yeah, as I said at the beginning, there is a lot of areas in ServiceNow which are not that known as the
Yeah.
classical ones, but really deserving the attention. Yeah, to gain more from the ServiceNow.
And we will be doing that. Our very first episode here on the CMA panel was which one? Legal service delivery, right?
Nice.
One of these obscure modules in ServiceNow
Yeah.
that no one really knows a lot about, and we're going to change that. And I'm just hitting my table with the microphone. That was not sorry
Perfect.
about that. Thank you everyone for being here. Happy Friday, and I see you next week for the next panel. Until then,
Enjoy your
bye
weekend.
bye.
Bye.